James Pearce should be at SEC Media Days. We can make an argument about Nico not playing much, doesn't hold a lot of water because Keenan Pili's going to be there, and he's played even less than Nico. But at least Keenan Pili's 47 years old, so he's mature enough to handle it, which again doesn't hold water because I think Nico is mature beyond his years. But he's a freshman. Well, they don't take freshmen. Well, they did in 2000 with Jared Lorenz in Kentucky. Nico should be there and Pearce should be there, but Pearce should be there more. Pearce would have an opportunity to sit down and say, I want to discuss that traffic incident in which I was supposedly disrespectful of police. I want to apologize. It was not my intention to do that. I'm making this statement because I didn't have to. Don't care if I was asked about it or not, but it's the right thing to do. Caleb, that would make that man millions of dollars in next year's NFL draft.
I agree. And if you want to say the Nico thing because they don't want freshmen going, fine. But you drive a great point with James Pearce. And it almost seems like they're trying to. Now, you and Fred White said this last year. I think you meant it differently, but it does seem like they're just trying to bubble wrap him and like just praying that he doesn't get in any more trouble before this season ends. And then they could say, fine, go on your merry way. We don't care. We just need what you can do for us on the football field this year.
Coop here. First down.
Are they afraid of what James Pearce might say at SEC Media Days?
Yes. I think they were upset about Joe Milton's "I don't lose in Florida" comment last year. It sucks for us, but they don't like. They're not like Nick Saban, the whole one voice. I'm the voice of the program, and no voices. But they want players to have a voice, but they don't want them doing anything that ruffles any feathers at all.
Fair. All right, Coop, what down?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Are you concerned that James Pearce runs afoul of team discipline before the end of this season, which we would think would be his last?
Yes. And this player is nowhere near as good as James Pearce, but there was another player who had a run-in with the law and went at police, and he was named Jeremy Banks. And Jeremy Banks literally sabotaged the Tennessee football program and a college football playoff appearance because he decided to get into a fight with the Heisman candidate at quarterback out of reportedly anger that he wasn't making as much NIL money.
My take with Pearce is I'm concerned for two reasons. One, I think when you are disrespectful of police, and I'm well aware that especially with minorities, that's a different topic, and there have been incidents that we could discuss that have been unfair with minorities. I understand that, but when you're disrespectful of police, then I think there's an undercurrent of mistrust, which it doesn't matter whose fault it is, Caleb, it could end up biting you in the rear. Whether it's your fault or their fault, it doesn't matter. It could bite you in the rear. So that's my concern. And the other thing is I've been told that he's a little wild, a little out there, and that is a concern. That's not to say he won't make it through the year. I hope he does. I hope everything's great. I hope he's the first pick in the NFL draft because he seems like a fine young man, but there is that concern. Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
All right. If you had a bet that he's an All-American or that he's a guy that's suspended for more than one game this year, what would you bet on? I'll go ahead and tell you, I'll bet an All-American. I think this is a concern. I don't think it's a huge concern.
Yeah, I'll bet All-American. As far as the James Pearce traffic incident, I think the biggest reason he didn't comply with police is because he couldn't and he didn't want to admit it. They wanted his tags, they wanted his proof of insurance. He refused to show it. That tells me he just didn't have it. So I think he refused to comply because he didn't have the choice to comply because.
Well, there's also a point where they said, now this is where it gets kind of weird. And again, I know the police reports can be weird. Okay. And I know that they can be vague. And they can be unclear, but he was supposedly asked to stand with a cop while another cop went through his car and then he left. That to me, if I'm a police officer, especially a guy that's probably more physically gifted than me, I worry about being put in danger. You know what I mean? If I tell a guy,
Well, and that also makes me question his intelligence to a certain degree. And I hate to bring that up because I got to say this, guys. Okay, and I agree. If we want to have the talk about like the tension with minorities and police, if that's true, and if James Pearce believes it's true, well, maybe rule number one then is don't run away from them, right? Like even if you're concerned about what they'll find in your car, I've covered a lot of crime cases, and people run from the police state for the stupidest reasons. They'll run over unpaid child support. They have a little bit of weed in their car and they don't want to get caught. Anything like that. If you get caught with that stuff, you lose a night in jail. If you run from the police, you might lose your life.
Definitely. I mean, I would think you definitely lose 30 days. That you're going to be. I mean, at the very least, don't people get 29 days for that or whatever it is?
There's nothing James Pearce could have had in his car short of a murder weapon used to kill somebody, which I don't believe he had.
Tyler Smith had a gun that had the registration scratched off, and he didn't go to prison.
Yes, exactly. So there's nothing you could have found in his car short of that would be worse than him running away. I mean, I'm just thinking again. Unless you have evidence that could lock you up, like of you as a serial killer, you shouldn't run from the police.
If you're Ricky Bobby and you got, a pound of the Colombian Bang Bang strapped underneath your car and a cougar in there, you better take off and go. But other than that, you need to pull over.
Exactly. I don't think James Pearce had a cougar in the back seat.
Now, Smoky Mountain Red asked this: how is this public speaking? That might be one reason he isn't going to the NFL, which actually that's very, very.
You mean media days? You mean media days, not the NFL.
What did I say?
You said he's not going to the NFL.
Sorry. I got mixed up because Smoky Mountain Red read my mind.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
How is his public speaking? That might be one reason he's not going to media days. It might be. I haven't heard him talk. But my argument would be you push people, not force, but you push people, you encourage people to do things that might be outside of their realm of being comfortable in. And this might be one of those things, and this would make him a better NFL prospect. And in the end, isn't that part of Josh Heupel's job is to make for the best NFL prospects he can? And part of that speaking in front of public and being able to convey your thoughts and your emotions without losing it.
Yes. And James Pearce is an edge rusher.
Not that cougar, Smoky Mountain Red. Go ahead.
Luckily for Tennessee, if your edge rusher isn't a great public speaker, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? That's not a guy I need to like. If your middle linebacker or your quarterback is not a great public speaker, you got a problem, right? That's a really big problem. But
and Kyle says along those lines, maybe he was just scared. And if he was and he opted out of this, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. But I don't believe that's the case based off what I've been told.
I think they are covering for James Pearce in a way that, we talked about them shielding Nico yesterday. I think they're shielding Nico because Nico found himself at the center of a lawsuit that took down the NCAA, and he never wanted any of that type of controversy.
Now, I've got this question, and Pseudo Sham just put it on. Why? I mean, we didn't even discuss this yesterday because it happened during the show and we were so taken aback with who was going. Why didn't Brew McCoy go instead of Amari?
Okay.
Give me a good answer.
Brew is a great leader, had no issues at Tennessee. There could be questions about his past if he went to SEC Media Days. So when he was
he had the legal issue at Southern California that was dropped. Again, I think this is you're going to have to answer these questions at some point. So why not answer it now on a smaller stage instead of right after you get drafted? I'm talking about Pearce as well. And you go to this big NFL draft table and millions and billions of people are watching you instead of little old SEC Media Days. I mean,
they're going to ask you anyway.
Right.
They're going to ask him at the NFL.
No, that's my point. But these are the training grounds to have the answers ready. It's not right after you get drafted and you're Laramie Tunsil smoking the ganja out of a big face mask bong. That's not the time.
Yes, that is very true.
You learn how to deal with the media.
It's not that, but Brew, look, I mean, you interviewed him on Sunday. He seems like he can deal with the media well. I just don't think Josh Heupel, because of the James Pearce issue, I don't think Josh Heupel wants those storylines out there right now. Look, here's the thing with Tennessee. Let's put this
That's putting too much thought into it.
Well, okay, but
not
Dave,
by you, but by Josh.
But Dave, let's be fair here. Tennessee again, Nico Iamaleava, their star quarterback, was at the heart of taking down the NCAA earlier this year. Tennessee has generated a lot of smoke already. You know what you don't want? Two of your star players at going to SEC Media Days getting asked questions about their legal past. Dave, how many questions are they going to get asked already about taking down the NCAA? That's going to dominate Tennessee's coverage at SEC Media Days next week.
Do you think I don't know that. What would a player have to say about that?
Josh Heupel also speaks at SEC Media Days.
Right. I would ask Heupel about it, but he doesn't say anything. As a matter of fact, somebody that works in another media agency said, I'm not going to go to Dallas to listen to Josh Heupel say nothing for 90 minutes.
Imagine if Josh Heupel brought Nico Iamaleava, Brew McCoy, and James Pearce, though. You have Josh Heupel asked about that. You'd have Nico asked about that. You'd have James Pearce asked about his legal issue back in December. You could have Brew McCoy asked about his past. Okay? This is that there would be so much smoke there. Now, again, me and you as media guys, those are relevant stories. My vote would be those three to go. I get Cooper Mays going. Cooper's a great leader. Cooper's great, but we have Cooper on our show every week anyway. So I'd want Brew McCoy just because, again, they're just to mix it up. But there would be questions about their past that would be thrown in there. And I think that that's kind of a big issue. So now I will say this, and I'm going to say this in favor of Pearce too, this one little thing. I think more than there was under Philip Fulmer, I think there's a bit of a hostile relationship between the university football program and law enforcement in Knoxville, Dave, right now. And I don't think it's unfair because Tennessee saw
you think there's a good relationship or a bad relationship?
I think it's more hostile than it used to be because
right now I think it's really good.
Well,
we know that moment in time, and that's because they're winning.
Well, what I'm saying is there's a Knox County DA who put A.J. Johnson's NFL career on hold for 5 years because she wanted to bring a case that she knew she was going to lose in 30 minutes.
Well, I know you brought that up before. I just and by the way, somebody asked about the Pearce charges were dropped. With the fact that they got dropped early, a lot of Vols haven't gotten in trouble, which in the offseason, I'm sorry, most schools have players that get in trouble. I happen to think the relationship with the police right now is very good. Now, it might not have been good with A.J. Johnson, and it might not have been good when Josh Heupel shows up and they've had a decade worth of losers before him.
And Jeremy Banks is on the program when Josh Heupel shows up.
Yeah, but I think it's good now. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, at Philip's best, he could call the individual police officer as an 11, and his worst, it was probably a 2 because they started the players started smarting off to cops, and at one point Philip called out the police department in a press conference, which is not very wise, and that was bad. Heupel to me is somewhere right now around an 8. I think the police would rather let a player go if they can than take a player to jail because Tennessee is successful right now.
But then we're talking about the Knox County DA forcing Jalen McCullough to settle on an indictment that never should have been brought up last year. I mean, this guy pushed out somebody who was in his apartment and wouldn't leave.
Okay, now, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. I think that's one person. But now this is a good point too. They don't want to talk about Brew's injury. Is that a factor?
I mean, Keenan Peely was hurt. He's going.
Yeah. Basically, every reason that you could come up with not to take Brew McCoy to SEC Media Days, some other Vol is going, despite that reason, to SEC Media Days.
Yes, and you can't even say the transfer thing because Hendon Hooker went 2 years ago to SEC Media Days, and he was a transfer. And heck, Joe Milton went last year. He was a transfer. So, I mean, you can't even use the transfer factor.
Keenan Peely's going this year. He's a transfer.
Yeah, that's right. Keenan Peele is going this year. I mean,
he's barely even a transfer because he's only played one game.
Josh Heupel made his SEC Media Days decisions based on how to avoid the most how to have the least controversy. And this comes back to the James Pearce thing. and this makes me suspicious of what actually happened with James Pearce and the law enforcement, is that they are being very cagey about it. Very cagey about it.
More than you know.
Yes.
I wish
They
I
weren't
could tell
cagey.
you everything right now.
They weren't cagey when the NCAA came after them over Nico. They went all out, right? They laid their cards on the table. They said, this is BS, and let us tell you what we're going to do, and we're going to take you out. And by golly, they did. And by the way, the Jalen McCullough situation, they kind of were upfront at that. They were like, look, they haven't brought any charges. We're going to play them. We don't care. We're going to play them.
Okay, now, post on the message board. Y'all forgot Brew had criminal charges before he came with that ex-girlfriend or whatever. No, we do remember that. Those were dropped. Okay, so, and they were very questionable based off the research I did. I don't want to get into I don't know what happened. I'm not going to play lawyer, but they were dropped. So you have to give him that credit. I will tell you from being around him, and I'm not great at reading everybody, but I'm pretty good at reading people. I think he's a fine, fine young man. I was blown away by his maturity level. I know kids are older now than they used to be because of COVID, but I was blown away. He's one of the more mature in 25 years, Caleb. I would say he was one of the more mature Tennessee football players that I've ever covered.